Hey YouTube, Jeep and Bubba here, and today I am working on my 2005 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, and we're going to be changing the brake pads, the rotors. We're going to be upgrading those two items, and then I've been getting a little noise out of this axle, so I'm going to be putting new wheel bearings in. So just a little how-to, maybe it's something you're interested in. If you are, we're going to be doing a step-by-step. Unlike my usual videos where I say, this is what I'm changing, and then I show you it changed, I'm going through step-by-step. So let's go ahead and get these lug nuts off. Okay, so I got the tire and wheel off, and I am using a jack and a jack stand. That's over here on the frame. But something else that I like to do if my legs are going to be underneath the Jeep for any amount of time is I'll stick that tire and wheel underneath the front axle, or sometimes underneath the brakes, something like that, somewhere out of the way. But if for some reason something happened to the jack or the jack stand, which it shouldn't in this case, it's set up properly, you just still feel a lot more comfortable knowing if anything falls, you're safe, you got time to get your legs and feet out. So that's just a little safety tip that I suggest. Now, I'm going to bring this in a little closer. Sorry for the shakiness. But basically what we have is our rotor. We have our brake pad, or our brake caliper. Our pads are inside of there. And then on this particular setup, I run an 1.5-inch wheel adapter. So I run a JK wheel pattern on my my LJ here. And if you're just changing the brakes on a stock Jeep, you won't see this piece unless it's been something that's added or modified. So I'll show you how to re-put those back on there the safe way, but all you really need to do is just go ahead and rip these 5 nuts out, and then try not to mar it too much. It may fall. If not, maybe take a dead blow hammer to get a little separation, and then you can go ahead and start unbolting the caliper and be able to slide that rotor off, which we're about to do. Alright, so now I got those nuts off, and wheel spacer comes right off. And now we're going to go ahead and pull off our caliper bolt and pull the caliper off. Alright, so the lug nuts were a 19mm, and so were the nuts holding on the wheel spacer. That may be different depending on your wheels. That's just what I have. But we're going to go ahead and pull the caliper bolts off, and if I go the right way, and they're 13mm. That's actually pretty typical for a lot of manufacturers who either have 12, 13, or 14mm. They should come pretty easily, don't be scared, unless they're completely loose. And you're going to reuse these bolts, so put them somewhere safe where you can retain them. And typically, on a non-rusted Jeep, these calipers will come right off, but if they don't, you can use a flathead. And what you're going to want to do is you're not going to want to pry right here. That can actually mess up your clips. But what you want to do is put right inside of the rotor itself. If it's slotted, you have a little section, and these are slotted, and you just push on the inside of that, and that little bit of pushing will push the rotor into the actual piston, and that'll make it easier for these to come off. And yeah, we'll need that. And another thing to note is where your bolts go into your calipers, there's slides that should move back and forth. And if those slides move back and forth, you may want to push them out of the way. Our Jeep assistant, lovely Nicole, helping us out. So I'm going to stick this right in the rotor, in the center of it. Now pry, not hitting the pads I'm just pushing on that rotor, and that's going to put the pressure on the piston to loosen things up. And in some cases, you will have to pry a little bit right here, which I will do a little bit. Yeah, that was all I needed. But what I did was make sure I wasn't on the clips. And boom, your caliper's off. Now, what you're going to want to do is there's a clip on this side, and there's two clips on each side here that retain this pad. And then there's actually a clip inside. Don't try to take that inside one off first. Make sure you take the outside one off first. And this is just specific to this Jeep caliper. If you're watching this to learn how to change brakes on, you know, your 99 Pontiac, I don't know for sure if that's how it's going to be retained. Some just float. These are actually retained against the actual caliper. It's different for every vehicle. And then you'll see as I push this, that clip is inside of the piston. And basically just remember that this one is your inside pad. Now if you're watching at home, you're going will you grab me a bungee cord? You're saying these pads are pretty thick, and you're right, they are pretty thick, but I knew that I overheated these the other day, and I just looked, and this is the first time I pulled them off. Looking, there's actually stress cracks all in the pads right here from being overheated, and that's just a sign that this pad's been overheated, and they can actually kind of glaze up and they'll start to deteriorate. And honestly, if I were going to be selling you, or if it's obviously on my own vehicle, I'm going to changing them, I would have this conversation with you in the shop and tell you there's cracks and kind of stress fractures and that kind of thing in the pads, and I would recommend this to be changed. But that's just me. It's not the main reason I'm changing the pads. I'm actually upgrading to a better quality pad and a better quality rotor. And the main reason I'm actually changing them is because I need to change this wheel bearing anyways. But honestly, just seeing this, I would suggest these pads get changed, even though there's plenty of thickness. These things have been smoked before, and I knew that I did that. So basically, when you put these back in, you're going to have to compress this piston right here, and you're going to need a tool for that. So if you're at that point, sorry about that, my SD card got full. Anyways, if you're at the part of the video where we've just pulled this out, one, you're going to want a bungee cord or a ratchet strap or something, but also you're going to need a tool to compress this this piston. So maybe hit pause and see if you have that. You can use a C-clamp. Snap-on and a few other companies make a little like ratcheting thing, what I'm going to use, and that's going to push this actual piston in. You can try to manhandle it. You can try to use a big pair of pliers to squeeze it in. C-clamp or the ratcheting thing seems to be the best, safest way. If we're going to use a C-clamp, make sure you put a pad back in so you protect this. This is actually a pretty brittle piece that touches the pad material, or that the back of the pad touches on this piston. So anyways, bungee cord is here, and I've got that, and I'm just gonna actually run it through. And I do have extended stainless steel brake lines, so I can almost sit this thing on the floor, but it's just safe to have the caliper out of the way because we're not going to be using it or doing anything with it right now. So anyways, good to go forward there. Alright, so we have our rotor right here. Mine was pretty loose, but if yours doesn't seem to want to come off, just hit it with a hammer. But mine was loose. So now I'm going to grab new parts and kind of show you a comparison between these rotors and the ones I'm putting on here. Just some quick looks at it. The rotors are really smooth. Really nice set of rotors on this Jeep. So somebody has actually done a good job at taking care of these, and that wasn't me. I wasn't the guy that put these rotors on. And I don't think they're OEM rotors. These don't appear to be factory. I don't see any factory markings on the rotors. But anyways, these probably were cut or brand new at some point. But I can see little blue streaks, and it's very glossy, almost mirror-like. And that's a bad sign that it's been overheated. and it kind of creates an effect of drive or stopping on ice. That smoothness, there is no friction here. And the way that disc brakes work is they use friction. Heat is created, and that makes friction, and that gives you your bite. Well, if you get too hot, then you actually get to a point where your brakes do not work anymore. You can overheat the caliper. You can boil those. You have a wet boiling point and a hot boiling point for your or dry boiling point for your brake fluid. Blah 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 blah. If your rotors get really hot and they have these blue streaks like I have in here, you're gonna lose braking force. And now that I'm pulling a trailer pretty often for camping, and I'll have a lot of camping gear, and I have bigger tires than factory, it's time to upgrade these with something new. So I'm going to grab that and show you what I got. Hey guys, I'm back. So here's what I'm going with. PowerStop Evolution Carbon Fiber Ceramic Performance Pads. This is their, let me see what kit they call this one. This is the one-click kit. If you're shopping for these, we do have them on blackbearoffroad.com, and I will put a description below, or a link in the description below. But this is, I want to say it's the whatever the Z is. There's a couple options. There's some for towing, performance. This one I want to say Z23. So the part number is Z23477. So this is the Z23 package. And this is a carbon fiber ceramic brake pad. And these ones I took off, I'm not sure what they're made of, but they look to be a semi-metallic pad, which is a fantastic pad for traction. Can be bad for brake dust and noise. I didn't have any noise issues out of them and not that much brake dust, so they're actually probably a pretty quality pad. It doesn't have a brand on them, so I can't give any shout outs to anybody. I think they may be Napa, but anyways, pretty decent pads. Not too much. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Not too much to complain about on these, other than I am smoking them from too much heat. And I will say this: ceramic pads and carbon fiber pads are low dust. They, when wet, can not build up. They don't build heat as fast, so they may feel not so good when you're first getting on them in the morning. They may feel like they're not biting like your old pads if you had semi-metallics or organic or something. But they're actually going to give you the best feel overall. If you ride on the highway and you haven't touched the brakes in a long time, like you're doing a long stretch, before you get off that exit, maybe just give them a little touch, because that heat will give you the friction you need as you're getting off. But it's not anything scary. I'm just saying that maybe it's something you notice, and it's going to be a slight difference. When they're wet, I find that they're loud. Like if you pull in a car wash or something like that, after the fact, you may hear them being kind of noisy. That's my complaints. I'm telling you, real world experience. I'm actually ASE certified and in brakes and steering and suspension, and used to do this for a living. And I've changed tons of people's brakes. And anytime anyone came in complaining about brake dust or noise, long-term noise, I've had these pads for 3 months now. They're noisy. I would try to put them in a ceramic brake. PowerStop wasn't an option at the company I worked for, but I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Akabono brakes. Really good quality. I suggest those for something that's not as noisy. But anyways, I'm running PowerStops, and the reason I'm going PowerStops, this is literally the best pad for a stock caliper on the market. I've had my experiences with other brands. I found some other brands to be noisy. This is I had a PowerStop set on my Cherokee, and I've run them on other vehicles, and it's really, really high quality stuff. And for the price, it's unbelievable how good the quality is, and you actually get a lot of hardware along with it. I did purchase these. It's not a sponsorship or anything like that, as I always tell you guys. So right off the bat, new rubbers come for the calipers, so that's going to be helpful to your calipers. If your old ones are busted, ours are nice and fine. So I'm actually probably going to hold on to these rubbers for when those do actually bust. And then we got some little squeal clips, is what I call them. I don't know what their technical name is, but we have these little clips here, and those go right in here, and they actually were non-existent on the pads we put on. Not all companies send them, and they're supposed to help it ride in this little channel right here. And there's actually no lube on this bracket right here and right here. And actually I can see two little chips where somebody used a flathead screwdriver on this and damaged it a little bit, and that could cause a little squeak, little shimmy, as this is basically traveling back and forth as you're either putting the piston in, it goes in, or then it will go back as you let off the piston. But, well, it won't retract basically, but it'll move, and it'll have a pathway to move. Right now all I have is dust and dirt and not a good place to travel. So if you put that metal in there, it'll help with the squealing, and you can put a little grease in there, and that's a good top quality tip. And if I'm boring you with my information, feel free to speed ahead to me actually doing this. If you're at home going, I need to do my brake job in 2 minutes, I'm just giving you as much information as possible on this. So anyways, very similar to our old pads, but you can see, if I can get that close enough, that this is definitely a different material here. This is the same metallic. You can see the flakes of metal in there, and then this is ceramic and carbon fiber. Both of these slots in the center are to let brake dust get through and heat get out. You can see there's a lot smaller, and basically the same shape, just a little bit of taper on these versus this one, but they're going to be definitely very close in shape. And you can see, like I said, there's a lot of thickness left in these because this is a brand new set, and you see what you get. But these will have a backing pad, which is nice, that will break down on squeal, and you can see there's a backing pad built in back here. So very similar, but the composite is really the difference. If you open these up and you're expecting them to be just magical or something like that, that's really the only difference that you're going to notice. There's 4 pads in a box, and let's see if there's anything underneath. Sometimes they'll give you lube. That'd be nice if they did. Yep, it's hidden, so if you're looking in your box, go underneath the thing that looks like your chicken breast pack, the styrofoam, and there's some lube, and this is silicone lube, which is good. It's synthetic. I have a big jug of this here, but sometimes I just use what they include, because if you need to warranty these, they're going to ask if you applied this, and you're going to need to apply this to a lot of places, and they actually put the diagram on the back of their pack. So apply that lube. Remember, at home, lube is your friend. I'm going to set that aside for now. And one thing I'll mention. Okay, sorry. We're back. So next, going on to next, we have our rotors. Now here's a big difference. Here's going to make all the difference in the world. This is a zinc coated rotor, so it will resist rusting. If you see, this thing is cross cut all over, creating a great friction point, and it's going to give us a great braking surface. It is slotted, and it is cross drilled. Now, the slot itself is meant to clean the pad and get the dirt off every single time, or dust, every single time it goes around. And it's going to also make sure there's a flat braking surface so that there's nothing uneven, and it's going to get the most bite every time it goes around. Now, some people will argue that having these drilled beveled surfaces in the slot gives you less actual friction space to brake and stop. And that's going to be 100% true. Your stock brakes brake better when they are cold and they first get started, whenever you get started driving for the day. But the more you drive, the more braking you lose. If it's a brand new pad, brand new rotor, right off the line, that's the best your brakes are ever going to feel the entire time you drive. If you drive an hour up and down hills, you're going to notice that you're going to get some brake fade. What these rotors are going to do with this cross-drilled and slotted area here is it's going to clean the pad, make sure it's flat every single time, and it's smooth for braking surfaces. And that cross-drill is actually going to let the the gases, so brake gases that are released with heat, to escape, and it's going to go through these vents right here. Now you're going to notice your factory one's vented, but that's just letting air run through and cool the rotor. This is actually letting the gases escape, allowing the pad to cool down faster and to stay cooler faster. So in a situation where you're pulling a trailer or you're going up and down hills or you're just off-roading, then this is going to be a pad that's going to perform. And that's huge. The other thing that you should note is when you go off-roading, these will get clogged with mud and dirt. So, not when they're hot, but when they've cooled down and you get back home, run a hose through these or some brake clean. Just make sure they're not clogged, because they won't work if they're clogged. Brake dust will fill them up too. So, it takes a little performance on your side, but the zinc coating, there's a technical word, I call it like cross-stitching or whatever, that gives them a fantastic braking surface. The material this is made out of versus factory is a whole lot nicer. They're going to tell you the thickness on here. If you can find someone who can cut these, you can cut them later. Not all of them can be cut. They're marked front and passenger side, so please listen to that. And sometimes it's nice to put a mark where you put it on, because if you cut these later, you want to put them back on the same stud because they're going to wear differently on a different stud. That's about it. But if you think about your stock one, that's just plain old steel. That's nice and rusted. And just has those vents like this. These are going to let that heat out. And I can feel this one's a lot heavier. And it made solid. Now, one thing is, and I could, well, I'll tell you that in a second. One thing about these pads, they're already scorched. They're heat treated. And why that matters is they're going to break in faster. Brakes do have a break-in period. That's funny. Brakes, break-in period. And if you Google how to break in brakes, it'll tell you how to do that. Basically, you're going to want to stop. And they may even say it on the box. But, yeah, I think it does say on the box. But you're going to want to go through a procedure of breaking it in, and that's going to seat it to the rotor, and it's going to give you a longer life and a better pad overall. So, follow those. They're actually, they're actually instructions on the box. So, do that braking procedure. That won't be on this video. Now, these rotors come with a packing material on them, and it is like an oil, and they will smoke, and you could possibly warp or have problems with your rotors down the road if you do not clean them. You can use soap and water. A lot of people suggest Dawn dish soap. I had a teacher that went as far as to say that yellow Dawn dish soap was the best. And the only thing to use, you can use a brake clean station like an Aussie machine, but make sure it is clean of brake fluid or any kind of brake oil. My thing that I like to use is a non-chlorinated brake clean, and I have quite a bit here at the shop. So I'm going to go off camera, clean this thing, and come back. And then we're going to actually start on the wheel bearing. If you don't need to change your wheel bearing and you're just interested in changing the brakes, probably skip the next 2 steps with us. Alright, I got that rotor all cleaned up, and now I'm going to start working on, move you a little closer. Alright, I'm going to start working on the wheel bearing. So, you're going to notice it has a little dust clip here, and it's going to have a cotter pin, or Carter key, as some people call them. I like to use a pair of needle nose pliers, and they're not working straight, or a pair of dikes, or side cutters, as some people call them, to bend them straight. And you might want to look in your box that you're buying and see if they come with new ones, because not everybody includes new ones. You may want to reuse this one if it's not broken, or you don't break it in the process of getting it out. If you do have a new one, sometimes you can just clip them right down here at the end, and you're just going to pull it through basically once it's gotten straight, or somewhere close to straight. Nicole, they're going to be in my big nut drawer. Oh, I have the ratchet right here. Nicole's been awesome in handing me tools. And I even saw a blue Gatorade in my feature. Anyways, I've got that pretty straight. You can start to pull it. Try not to bend it if you can help it. I'm not gonna be able to help it. You can also, I've seen old timers put a nail in right here, then take a hammer, tink, 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 hit the nail, like you put it in long ways, hit the nail out. I will just struggle with it like this for a while. Also, if you've got any penetrating oil, This one's pretty rusty. It's probably gonna break. Now's a great time to use it. Oh, my needle nose tip broke. Wow. Thanks, China. Also, you can tap the back. We have some a hammer. You can tap the back of this pen to kind of assist in it coming out. Basically, once we get this pen out, we're going to get this dust shield off, and then there's going to be a nut underneath. And basically, this stops it, the nut, if it gets loose, from spinning completely off. Although I've seen cases where the nut's pretty loose and it just goes ahead and snaps that. It's a little big. I like my 4-pound hammers, but don't think it'll get in there. Anyways, let me cut to having this already out. After an act of Congress, we did remove the cotter pin. I did have to cut it a little bit and use violent excessive force. Okay, there's a little washer that's underneath there. Don't know how important that is, but I'll retain it. And then there's this little dust shield thing. Retain that. Retain this, except for if it looks like this. Don't. Get a new one. They sell big packs of them at the hardware store. Now, something that's important to note, there's rust on this, and that's okay. But if somebody has come in here on your axle, yeah, this rust is pretty ugly, but the nut will clean that off. If someone's come in here and notched it, and you can see that they'll hit like with a flathead or a punch or something, and that's like another trick to keep the nut from not getting loose and coming off. Make sure that it's smoothed out. If not, you will strip this nut, which when you put this nut back on, and you're supposed to, it will strip your axle, and then you'll have to get a new half shaft, and that's too much. So don't do that. Alright, I got a 36 here. I guessed, and I was right. I'm going to use an impact. Not sure if it's going to take it off or if I'm going to have to get the breaker bar out. Right off. Beautiful. Alright, so one thing I like to do is put this back on, but not too tight. And basically all you have to do to get the wheel bearing off the rest of the way is there's 3 nuts, three bolts that are threaded through the wheel bearing and through the actual spindle itself, and that might require heat. That might require some PB blaster or penetrating oil, and it's going to require some strength. So I'm going to get some oversized wrenches, and one thing to note before you pull those out, look to see which way your dust shield looks, okay? You can take a picture if you need to. I noticed that this one has a window right where my drag link comes in, so I'm going to make sure I put it in that way, and then it's also concaved, I guess it would be, I don't know, it's away from me. If you put it in the wrong way, then nothing's going to go back in. So you can put this thing back on 10 different times wrong. You're going to be upset. Don't do that. Just make sure you notice which way it comes off. My awesome wrench assistant, grab this for me. If memory serves correct, most Jeeps are 14s. And it's the one wrench she didn't have me. Let me double check myself and see if the 15s. I think I might be wrong. $15's too big. 13's it. Okay, it's 13. I was wrong. I thought most Jeeps were 14. These are mountain wrenches. That's what it's called. Mountain wrenches. They're oversized ratcheting wrenches. You can use a breaker bar. I like these because they ratchet. And also, the back of the head of the bolt is 12 point. So these happen to be 12 point. So it gives you some more biting power so you're not stripping using your 6 points. Which 6 points will take it out, but good chance that you strip it. So maybe you can rent these. I got these on a Snap-on truck when I used to do this every single day. And they are worth buying. Although kind of expensive. Just like anything in life. Alright, I got this where it should loosen. Yep, the first one broke free. And what I like to do is loosen it just a little bit and then break the other two free. Don't completely pull it out because you want there to be a nice strong surface for you to loosen these. If like two of them are loose and you're trying to break the other one free and it's really hard and it's slipping, that makes it not so easy. And this is a good time too, just as you mentioned, I always check my ball joints. Upper ball joint on this thing, looks like the boot's busted, but it's also a good time to lube it up before you put the tire on. I don't think it's broken. I don't have any play in it, but good time to take a look at that. Axle seal's looking great. Axle U-joint looks great. Yeah, it's a good time to look at stuff while you have to pull out these long bolts. So I'm on the third one here, and I just did all those about halfway. And I've had these where guys have tried to impact them, and they'll strip the heads, and it's really hard to get out. So I suggest doing it by hand so you can feel it. If it feels like you're going to break it, apply heat, and apply heat to the spindle, not to the bolt. It'll expand the spindle and make it easier to pull the bolts out. And I just use propane. You can use any kind of heat you like. I use a propane torch, but isobutane or oxygen acetylene is good. And another trick is PB Blaster or penetrating oil, whatever you like to use. Make sure it is a penetrating oil. WD-40 is not a penetrating oil. Sorry, that's pretty boring information, but now you know. Anyways, I got these all pretty hand tight. So, see, I told you I'm going step by step with you today. All my other videos are Shazam, it's done. And I just don't want you guys to think that I had like a whole crew in here doing this for me. Because I've seen Truck You. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Bruno. I don't think you're doing all that work yourself. I don't think Bruno would make a YouTube video like this. If you're too young to know what I'm talking about, Google Truck You. It is littered with sponsorships, and I love that show. So I'm not hating on it. It's awesome. Got me all pumped on a Sunday morning to get out and wrench on my Chevy S10. Alright. I don't know if these things are going to be... Yeah, I can pull this out by hand. It's kind of rusty. Alright, that's what this bolt looks like. So that's what I was telling you. 12 points right here. Little rusty right here. There's no Loctite on these, and they do not require Loctite, although you can use it if you want. I'm going to pull the other two out real quick. Anyways, I got all three bolts off. Now I'm going to remove this nut. And the only reason I kept that nut on there is for some reason I pulled on this thing when I was pulling those nuts out. It just wouldn't fall on my knee because it's kind of heavy. That's just something I do. Don't even know why. Anyways. If that doesn't work. Oh, I still have a washer in here. But that washer is not holding anything. But it's important. I might get a magnet here shortly. But it's important to retain that. Anyways, a lot of people will go boom, boom, boom on the outside, and we might have to do that. But I'm going to try hitting it against it to create it to go apart and not pull on the axle shaft. Let me cover your ears. Yep. I don't know if that's helping you or not. Okay. Now I'm going to pull on the axle shaft. Like I said, I wasn't going to. Awesome, it came off. And my wife covered yours a little bit. Alright, here's the washer. Retain that. There's the dust shield. Retain that. Alright, here is your wheel bearing. And it's all one piece. And this is your axle shaft. And be careful, because you can actually pull your axle shaft out. If you do accidentally pull your axle shaft out, you can just slide it right back in. It's not that difficult. Just maybe inspect your seal and make sure everything's okay. I might take a look down in here in a minute and see how much sand or dirt. That doesn't look too bad. But I will say, it's not too bad to slide back in. Stub shaft seems good. U-joint seems awesome. But I digress. Alright, here's the wheel bearing. It's pretty rusty and looks like the seal back here is pretty much destroyed. Spline looks okay. So I can already tell you by spinning this that it has noise in it. It sounds like one of the bearings is bad. You can kind of hear it. Yeah. And imagine spinning that at 70 miles an hour. It's going to make some noise. Also, something to think about, if you ever have studs that get boogered up, you can change the studs, but if you think your bearing is pretty bad, you can pick these up pretty cheap, and they come with all new studs. And the nice thing is it's all one piece. You don't have to do any press work. Alright, so what I bought, I went on rockauto.com. I don't sell these on my website, but I bought Timken bearings. I think this is the best bearing money can buy, and they're actually just about the same price as everyone else. You can run whatever bearing you want, but I went on Rock Auto and bought these Timkens. Timkens are usually made in the U.S., so that's good. And they're almost always the highest quality that you can buy. So it's worth noting. Also, make sure you don't have ABS, or you do have ABS when you're ordering. That's important to know. I don't have ABS, and so it's not important. These Timkens were made in China. So everyone thinks Timkens are made in the USA. I didn't even look. But it's a USA company. They made these in China. If you want all American bearings, you go Koyo. And those are good quality. But they don't actually make Koyos for this Jeep. So anyways, you can see nice, new, shiny. Wow. Quiet. And it's like stiff, like almost hard to move. This one's like loose as a caboose. So beautiful, all sealed, no grease coming out. Looks awesome. Should I clean this? I'll clean it a little. But if you want to clean more, take a toothbrush to it. Do whatever you want to do. My mating surface is pretty dang on smooth. And you're going to get your splines on there. And just make sure you line up your holes. You can spin it if you need to. And then, what I'm going to do, grab that washer, put it back on, put my nut back on. And I'm going to put it down. Well, make sure you put it on correctly. I can tell the way the washer sat that this side was the inside. Anyways, I just put it on snug to hold it in place, but not so tight that it's not easy to put your bolts on. And then you're going to put these 3 bolts back in. I do them all hand tight, then snug, and then go back and go to gorilla tight. I'm sure there's torque specs for them online. I don't have any for you. I torque to yield, and that means as strong as I can possibly do them. And I don't use Loctite, but you can if you want. Alright, so take 2. I didn't put my dust shield back on before I put the wheel bearing back on. So tightened all the bolts painstakingly, and I'll never get that 5 minutes back again. So now, gonna touch the dust shield on. I'm gonna put my wheel bearing back on, and then I'm gonna tighten my bolts down. Alright guys, I got the dust shield on correctly now. Everything's snugged up and tight. I did look up the torque spec for you guys on the bolts. They're 70 feet-pounds. I get them a lot tighter than that, I'm sure. Now, I am going to get my torque wrench out for the axle nut, and it's supposed to be set at 175. And I went ahead and snugged it down a little bit, but I didn't get it all the way. And then you're going to want to jam like a pry bar, some kind of tool like a screwdriver, and I'm kind of on my knees because I'm going to put a lot of pressure here on this torque wrench. So I need a bigger pry bar. Okay, got a proper pry bar now, so I can get some leverage. Okay. That's kind of hard to do one-handed, but it's 175 feet-pounds. Maybe you want to get a partner, but I knew I could push 175. Anyways, I put that washer back on the inside, got the nut. We're going to go again with our dust clip. Make sure it lines up with your... Make sure the spins freely. Make sure it lines up with this dust shield. Then you're going to put your new cotter pin in just after you put this little washer. Actually, this little washer goes on the inside. Sorry. This little washer on the inside. This against there. Like so. Gives a little spring effect. I guess that pushes against the Carter key. And then don't reuse the old one. Put a new one in. Button it down. And then we're going to clean up our spindle and put our rotor on and start putting the brake pads on. Alright, so now we got this bad boy on. I'm going to clean my spindle. And just give this a nice surface. Doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but just smooth, free of dust and dirt. Use a little brake clean if you want. And I will squirt it with a little brake clean before I put it on. But the pad's on. But now we're good to put our rotor on. And I cleaned it, so I'm going to grab it. And this is the side. This is front passenger. And this is a good time to see if your dust shield's on the right side, because this won't spin. If not, yep, dust shield's on correctly. And a little trick, if you want, while you're doing this, you can throw a lug nut on. And it'll kind of hold your rotor. I don't want to snug it all the way, but just so I have a little bit of play, but so it's not falling off while I'm trying to do this. Just make sure you take it back off before you try to put the wheel back on. Anyways, now we're going to compress our piston. So unbungee my caliper. And like I was talking about, this is a tool. This one's made by Blue Point, and that's a subsidiary of Snap-on. There's other companies that make it. Basically, just put it in. And tighten, ratchets out, presses this in. But you can use a C-clamp. There's all kind of tools you can buy. Hardware store. This is something you can rent if you want. This is a single piston I've been able to use in a pinch when I'm changing brakes, or we're gonna compress them. A pair of pliers and the old pads. Alright. That should be all the way in. Now, top safety tip, before you go to test drive this, one thing you're going to definitely want to do is push your pump your brakes about 20 times before you ever put it in drive or park, whichever way you're headed, just to put this back out and get a bite on the rotors. If not, you're going to have a long way to travel, and you have to pump a bunch, and you won't be able to do it in time, and you may run into something. So you don't want to do that. Anyways, now we're going to refer to our packet, push these pins out, and go ahead and grease them. These are actually pretty greased, and they moved well. But we're going to go ahead and put some more grease on them, and we're going to put some grease on these end pieces here, and we'll start putting the pads in. Okay, guys, so I lubed here. I lubed my shims, or my pins. One was actually kind of seized, so I beat on it a little bit and put lots of lube in it. And yeah, I got everything pretty much lined up. I got my pads installed. I put a little bit of lube on the back of the pads and definitely right here where they attach to the spindle. Those pieces, these things, they're shims and they're to stop clunking and clicking and all kind of other noises. I'm not putting them on. They're just going to be a pain in the butt to put on, and I don't really have that going on, so if I do start to have that going on, I'll save these and put them on. If yours seem pretty loose and you want to get some tightness back out of your, if you think you're having a little problem with little clicking noises, things like that, then those shims have different sizes and depth, and you can just, sorry, you can go ahead and install those, and it's no big deal. So one thing you want to do is make sure you have your pins pushed far enough away to install. And I just kind of mocked it up and saw where everything was. You definitely want to put the notches on first on the bottom, and then the top parts just rest right on the top, which I have lubed up. So and sometimes these things need massage just a little bit. Give it one sec. Okay, thanks for waiting. Anyways, I got my bottom notches in. Just had to shift a few things over. And with everything in position, your bottom one should both be in the track. The top one should just be touching the back right here, and you can see that's a good place to put your lube. And you're going to want the rubber bushings or the rubber boots. Make sure that the pins are not out of the rubber boots and they're not busted. You can replace them if yours come with that, but then just also make sure that they're actually lined up with the holes for the caliper, and then we'll put our caliper bolts in and snug those up. Alright, got our bolts, a little bit of lube on them. Just keep them from rusting. You can use anti-seize too if you like. And just get a few threads started. And if they don't want to go in, just double check that you're lined up. Don't force anything. Don't use air tools. Don't use impacts. That's my suggestion to you. And also, don't over tighten them, but make sure they are tight. If you want to look up a torque spec and use a torque wrench, then feel free. But these things can snap on you. Remember, they're just little 13 millimeters. One thing is, if they do get loose, they could cause a major accident. So there's a lot of importance to them being tight. But again, you don't want to over tighten them. Kind of like doing a spark plug. You want them in there tight and snug, but you don't want to break a spark plug off in the head, kind of thing. Use some common sense if you got it. If you don't, automotive wrenching might not be for you. But hey, maybe you're just a nerdy guy who knows how to put IKEA furniture together. I'm not knocking you. Maybe you want to get a torque wrench, a small 3/8 would be perfect. I bet these things need to be about 35, but they do have these specs all over Google. And that'll be good for you. When you put the caliper on, know that you can put it on upside down. You want your bleeder to be up top. That's how you know it's on correctly. You can't bleed something if the bleeder is below the brake line coming in. That's just not how it works. And it'll actually work upside down with the line twisted. So if you ever go to bleed it, I'm not going to bleed the brakes because I just did that not too long ago. But if you'd like to do that, I'm sure there's some people out there with a nice video. If you're interested, next week I'm going to do complete history on drum brakes from the 1935s. 36 will be the following week. Just kidding. I know this is a long video about brakes, but basically we got this all snugged in. I'm just using, my built-in torque wrench right here. And I know that I've got these snug and safe. This thing should be able to move a little bit. That's perfect. I'm going to pull this off. And then we're going to give you a quick how-to. And I can do that right now. Put on wheel spacers. Now, I actually have a brand new one in a box because my old one, I tore the threads up one day pulling the tire off. I don't know if I was pulling off or putting on lug nuts, but I knew I cross-threaded it, and I just hammered down on the impact and said, I'll fix that at another point. And I happened to stock G2 wheel spacers. These are 1.5-inch adapters, like I said earlier. They take you from 5 on 4.5 to 5 on 5. And yes, why would you want to do that? Because my Sweet Method wheels do not come on 5 and 4.5. And more people, don't get mad at me, more people wheel with 5 on 5, like JKs and JLs. And it's good to have friends that have wheels that fit your Jeep if you need a spare. I happen to have a spare, and my trailer happens to run the same bolt pattern, so it's just good to have. Anyways, what you're going to do is slide this on, make sure it fits. Make sure it fits your wheel before you put this on. And if you buy G2, now I really like nitro gear and axle wheel spacers, and we sell those as well. And they're good quality. These are G2s are good quality and affordable, and they are on our website as well. But it's just the one I happen to be running, and it comes with thread locker, and that is important. You need it. Red thread locker. Don't run blue. Be smart. Basically, you'd put a little dab on to make sure it's not too hot. Oh, that's something different. You're just gonna cut that tip off. Make sure you don't underuse it. You can always buy more. Just over hell do it if you ever have to pull this off. You saw I was using impact and it broke it loose, and I had thread lock around here before. But anyways, the trick and the thing that scares people about wheel spacers and adapters is they're afraid that this is aluminum, some are cast aluminum, some billet aluminum. This is billet aluminum. Don't get cast, get billet. This is billet, and it's G2, so I'm sure it's probably made in China. I probably suggest running like a nitro or higher quality if you want to go all American. But I've run these G2s, and now for at least 20,000 miles, haven't had any issues other than stripping the threads. And the big trick is, if you use an impact, you could tighten these down so much that you break the aluminum, that you crack it, and you wouldn't know it, and it may not separate till way down the road. It could get loose, and you could potentially lose your wheel and tire, and that could potentially be fatal or devastating to anyone else riding down the road. Man, I cannot talk and put a lug nut on. So what you need to do is put these on by hand, every one of them, put them on snug. Just twist them down, make sure you get all the threads in. Okay, let's just move on to this one. Anyways, what you're going to want to do is put these all on by hand. What is going on? I don't know. Anyways, put these on by hand, and then take your torque wrench. You can look up your lug nut torque specs. I believe Wranglers are 90 or 100. I'm going to put this at 110, and you can follow that if you like. I have had incidents where wheel spacers have come loose, and it was never because I followed this method. It was always because I just hammered them on, didn't use thread lock, was just trying to get some fitment or something on some wheels, or had it happen on my trailer once, and I think I just didn't hand torque it. I just used the impact. Using this method, I've never had any issues, so it's definitely a lesson learned. I mean, I had a complete wheel off on my trailer once, so definitely want to follow this method. So you just tighten them down. If you need to grab your socket, you can get it all the way down, and then you're going to grab your torque wrench, and you could have someone put their foot on the brake while you tighten this, or you can do that same method I used with the pry bar, but you're just going to want to make sure they're hand torqued. After you do that, don't mess with them. Don't loosen them. Don't tighten them. I mean, don't even look at them. Just put the wheel and tire on there. Every time you're inspecting brakes or doing anything with your brakes, just pretend they don't exist. Pretend they're just a part of everything. But they are there. If you are replacing your brakes, you are going to have to pull these off, and they are going to be kind of in the way if you need to pull an axle. So maybe carry a little thread locker with you on the trail if that's something you're concerned about. Now, you can also use ratchet to speed this up. But basically, by doing this by hand and not with impact, you're ensuring that that nut's completely going down, not cross-threading. That's completely tight. And really what you want to do when you're torquing is go in a star pattern to make sure this goes on smooth. Usually what happens that causes these wheel spacers to get loose is for them not to be torqued all evenly, and basically it'll get some rattle as you're going off-roading or just on the road, and that in turn will turn into this loosening up and causing them to start actually stripping the studs on the inside, and that is dangerous. Anyways, that's how you properly set these up. I'm going to torque them, and we'll throw the wheels and tires on, and that will be a job well done. Okay guys, I got this all torqued down. Everything's on there. I'm ready to put my wheel and tire back on. And when you put your wheel and tire back on, I suggest following the same pattern. Maybe use an impact just in like the lowest setting. Just snug your lug nuts down to your studs, and then just torque them in a star pattern. We looked up the specs for the lug nuts, and it's anywhere between 85 and 115. So I put these at 115 all the way up, right? Yeah, 115, and that's good for an aftermarket wheel because you want them snug, you want them tight. Anyways, do not use Loctite to put your lug nuts on, just for your wheel spacer. Anyways, that's about it. I do want to mention that I am really impressed with these rotors and pads, and I'm sure they'll be great on the vehicle. Make sure, you see I got some grease from my hands, some dirt. Clean that off before you go and break them in. Follow the braking procedure. And I will mention that PowerStop claims 33% better braking over stock with these pads and these rotors in their calipers. I did not go with their calipers. I just kept stock. I didn't notice that the calipers from PowerStop were anything other than stock in red powder coat. Now, if someone out there from PowerStop or someone who's a big PowerStop fan says differently, I'm with you. There's kits out there that give you bigger calipers and bigger spindles and bigger rotors, and that's going to give you a huge improvement in brake power. But I don't think just the PowerStop caliper is going to give you a huge improvement unless your caliper is seized up. In that case, seems to be a nice caliper. Seems to be red powder coat, which is kind of cool. And powder coat's nice from keep you from rusting. But I just went with the pads and rotors. Hopefully we'll see a little bit of improvement. I'm not so sure about 33%, but I do know it'll give you a huge improvement towing and on days that It's you're putting a lot of heat and a lot of friction to it, going down hills, going up hills, going off-roading, really putting strain on it. This is going to make a huge world of difference, and having that new wheel bearing in there, it's really going to help this spin and not make so much noise when I'm driving down the road. So pretty pumped to have this on. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them below, and hope this video wasn't too long. I don't do a lot of how-tos because it kind of slows me down in wrenching, but I hope this was informative and helpful. And if you have any questions, be sure to shoot them below, or you can always send us an email at info@blackbearoffroad.com, and we can send you an email back, show you any of the products that we bought today, including the ones we got from Rock Auto, these spacers, pads, any suggestions we might have for upgrades other than this. But anyways, guys, I hope this video was informative, and I really appreciate if you've watched this from beginning to end. I hope you had that a lot of time to set aside, or maybe you're able to speed this up as you're doing the install. But if you just got this done, just know that you have one more side to do. If you want to know how to do the other side, just rewatch the video and speed up the parts where I was blabbing all the information out. But hope everyone had a good install. If you're doing this install, if you think about doing this install, you have questions, or you're planning on doing this in the future, I would definitely recommend it. I've done this same exact setup before. I did it on my Cherokee and was really happy. So you'll have no issues there, and you will be happy with it. But anyways, please like and subscribe as always. Not anyways, as anyways. That sounded British. Anyways, as always, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll be seeing you.